So hello and welcome to the Cloud Counsel, and thank you again for joining us. You join us today for episode 10, where we're going to be talking about the need to create new ways of working. For those of you joining for the first time, the Cloud Council has been formed to bring you actionable insights from a panel of experts from business, technology, entertainment, and sport. Today, as I said, we're going to be covering the need to create new ways of working. And clearly, we already are working in very new ways. But how's that going to emerge as we come out of this pandemic? And I'm delighted to have that discussion today with Lucy Jones, the head of European Service Delivery at Inchcape PLC, the leading independent automotive distributor and retailer, and by Chris Tunnicliffe, Global IT Director with Capco, the energy and financial services advisory business. A very good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So thank you both for joining us. And let's just start, for the benefit of our viewers, with a little bit of an intro into you, your background, and we'll start to go into your perspectives on today's discussion. Let's start with you, Lucy.
Thank you, Tom. So Lucy Jones, head of European Service Delivery at Inchcape. I look after 5 of their continental Europe markets, and I've been in service delivery for 20 years and at Inchcape for 12 of those.
Thank you very much, Lucy. And Chris, please.
Hi there, Chris Tunnicliffe. So I'm the Global IT Director of Capco. I've got about 20 years being a number of roles from CIO all the way through to project management and program management. And I really specialize in helping teams transform in changing times.
Terrific. Okay, well, the perfect panelist to cover today's topic. So let's start then with the big question. How do you get an organization to think creatively about how it operates? Now, Lucy, as you mentioned, you're in service delivery. You're at the business end of a lot of this. And I know you've worked in a lot of change management programs in large global organizations. What's your perspective on this?
Well, I think creativity is crucial, isn't it? Most organisations are operating at a highly competitive and global environment. So, and our customers are consumers, so they have really high expectations. And for my IT organisation, I think allowing them to be able to problem solve and innovate isn't always easy. So I found allowing them to be more agile, trying small, frequent changes and collaborating more with the business and getting a true understanding of their customers' needs. So it enables them to operate creatively.
Lucy, one thing I've seen through this pandemic is this dichotomy of a lot of change, uncertainty, unpredictability, and sometimes that can stymie this creativity and brings in a lot of risk aversion. At the same time, I've seen a lot of very accelerated digital transformation. So how do you kind of walk that tightrope when you're trying to bring in creativity with so much uncertainty?
It is a really difficult one, especially when the business often knows the bigger picture and you're trying to translate that into technology, or even with your team feeling a level of uncertainty. And I think smaller changes has definitely built trust in that relationship to get us to the end goal. We don't have to do a big bang approach anymore. We can do, small set changes that get us. And then in the end, the change was there.
Got it. So small and often. And Chris, I know you've done a lot of executive roles, CIO, IT leadership roles. You've done advisory roles. You've mentored startups. So a lot of that is about, affecting change, bringing in creative new ways of working. What's your perspective? And very specifically, I know, having spoken to you recently, you're one of the few that's right at the heart of it right now in the city of London. What's it all like, and how can you bring some of your experience to bear here?
That's right. Yeah, it's a strange world in London at the moment. Yeah, it's a lot of empty streets where they once were full and you couldn't walk down them. But coming on what you said, it's when you talk about creativity in uncertain times, I think we should take a leaf out of the entrepreneurs and the insurtech companies, even though they have uncertainty on whether their business will survive or not, doesn't stop that creativity. And I think it all depends on making sure you've got the right catalyst, the right diversity of thought within the teams that you're trying to get that creativeness from. So just like oil and water, if you leave it in a jar, it separates. You really need to shake that up if you want creativity. And I think that's part to play here, is look at who you're trying to get the creativeness from. And if that element's missing of somebody being different to the norm, well, find out how you can get it in through a mediator or, some help externally.
Yeah, and just in terms of practical advice, especially I know you're starting a new role. When you first come in, and a challenging time to join a new role, what sort of practical first things can you do when you're trying to action creativity, especially when you're joining a new organization? What's your advice?
So my advice is to use the cloud tools that we have. We are on the Cloud Counsel after all. So there's a lot of tools. Capco has 27 offices around the globe, so I cannot go and see every single person. So using tools like Poll Anywhere, so that you don't just get the thoughts and the ideas of the loudest person or the person in closest proximity. Use these sort of tools to actually scale your teams across different geographies to try and understand what thoughts and ideas they have or how they feel at the moment. I think it's a really good start whenever you enter a new company.
Got it. So lots of word clouds and polling, and just listen to as many people as possible.
Yeah, because normally a lot of people have got good ideas, but they may have been told no before.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, if you ask the question again and say, if money was no object, or what's the best thing that can help this department without thinking about the barriers, sometimes you start getting all of these creative ideas coming out of the woodwork. And then you can start working on, it's not you can't have it, but how can we deliver it perhaps slower or in a different way using different tools that we didn't have last time. So we know now that most of the boards and the people that we have to get the money from, they're used to using more and more collaborative tools, out there in the cloud.
Yeah,
and so I think it's time to start adopting that.
I wonder if something will emerge from this in so much as, when everybody was going into offices, a lot of the decision making happened in physical meetings with people who happened to be invited to those meetings or in the right place at the right time. Now we're all virtual, and a lot of that happens by, as you say, collaborating and getting a lot more perspectives from everybody around the globe. I wonder how that'll change that collaboration and where and what data and inputs those decisions will be made on, hopefully for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Lucy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, collaboration was really easy when we were all in the same room. You could have a coffee machine conversation and you'd have resolved something that could have taken half an hour in a meeting, but you just so happened to bump into the right person at the right time. Mm-hmm. And we're having, aren't we, to lean towards the more collaborative tools, using Teams, etc., and online video conferencing to enable that.
I'm finding the same, because when you're in an office, you're trying to rush between meeting rooms and you're always, you can never predict what those lifts are doing, whether you're going to get there on time. Whereas you're right now, you can IM people all the time, and yes, they might have popped off for a coffee or to take the dog for a walk, but I feel like I'm more connected now than I've ever been when I work from home.
More connected, more productive, more hours.
Well, we've got to be careful on that one.
So let's move then to the best practice. How do you ensure that internal people and process changes like collaboration and knowledge access leads to a better customer service? Now, Lucy, I know you've done a lot of people and process change. A great question for you. What's your perspective on this one?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one for me because not all of my team are based even in the UK, and there's lots of cultural differences as well across continental Europe. That's a steep learning curve, I think. And so I've always had to work with my teams remotely and build those relationships. And I think that's the key to getting the collaboration working, is that you spend time and you invest in those people to understand not just their way of working in that business, it's their cultural differences. because our back-end finance processes, our after-sales may well all be the same, but the way in which those people do business is different, and we have to acknowledge that to ensure that the customers get the best service possible.
Yeah, I think that's right. You can learn a lot from what a lot of IT departments have done for many years. We've always had kind of offshore development arms in different countries, different time zones with different cultures. And it's so important, isn't it, that part, which is recognizing that not everybody is the same type and the same person that you are.
And I think, using video conferencing, whilst you're missing the emotion of being in the room with somebody, it's far better than an email where half the translation is actually lost in the in the tone of it, as opposed to talking to somebody.
Yeah, no, completely agree, and I think there's sort of two sides to the coin, aren't there? There is your internal customers and the service that you're delivering internally, and then there's your external customers. I wondered how, for I don't know who would want to take this question, but how do you see, that playing out in terms of, that change up of service delivery to the external customers of both of your organizations?
Sorry, Lucy.
I think, it's looking at your demographic as well. So the people who are buying the cars for us and what they're used to, and they are consumers of a lot of online purchasing, and I'm sure that's the way that automotive procurement will go, is that you can get it online and it's leased. Demographic is used to a much higher turnover of the items that they own. So for us, it's things like doing a virtual walk around of the car, making sure we can get them in for appointments, as opposed to people just turning up into a retail centre. So it's those type of things, allowing them to feel the car as much as possible without actually being there.
And specifically, actually, Lucy, since you raised that for your industry, what is the challenge, I suppose, or in terms of direct to consumer, I guess, risk coming out of the pandemic, and what that means to Inchcape going forward? Do you have a view on that?
Not a specific view. I think we've made a huge effort to make sure our retail centres are safe for individuals. We obviously stayed open in an after-sales environment for key workers. So the team's really pulled together there, and we've made a huge effort to make sure that they're safe for our customers.
Great. So you were going to talk about Capco and his perspective on this.
So I was actually going to talk about a previous life. So I used to work within Hiscox Insurance, and there, we were talking about how we could get our call center staff to work from home. This was pre-COVID in a BCP scenario. And it was interesting as the discussion came about, which is just the simple things for call center staff, like how are you going to have your backdrop? What are people going to wear? Would the person actually like the person that they see in front of them on the video? There's a lot of strange dynamics that you never think. So for people who have going to interact more over video and things, really think, as Lucy said, about the demographic, about what they're expecting from your company, and realize that when that video opens, that is your brand straight away being demonstrated to the customer.
Yes, and there's again that balance of protecting the brand, but also authenticity, and how you get that balance right.
But if you look back though at the internal customers that we've got, the way that we've changed now, I think there's a great opportunity for things like internal chatbots for knowledge sharing. So how many times you in companies and people say, I've got a good idea, but I don't know who to send it to. Well, you can have a chatbot now that automatically will send it to the right department, the right change manager or lead, no matter what country they're in or what department they're in. It will get things to the right person. So I think that's also a different dynamic on your internal customers where you can use some of these products.
Well, that is a great conduit to our next section here, Chris, which is to the opportunity. So cloud computing, is that the key to developing new ways of working efficiently and effectively? Chris, what's your view?
In a nutshell, oh God, yes. I think it's more about using the tools that a lot of us already use, the WhatsApp, the Teams, the Jira, the Confluence, I think there's going to be more need, and there should be more proliferation of things like the digital whiteboards, where if you're in an office, you can write on the whiteboard, but people at home can also have that on their iPad or tablet and rub things out and draw things differently. So I think it's really going to take. I don't think it's going to go from 0 to 1, but I think we're going to see a big step change in how people are collaborating using these online tools.
Yes, we're all becoming experts in these tools overnight. And how many are there? I don't know, hundreds. But totally agree. And I think, I guess to you, Lucy, you're the person and the organization that's going to deliver a lot of them. What does that mean for you and your organization, and how do you manage that complexity and, I suppose, the demand that's coming from your internal customers on all the different tools they might want to use?
Yeah, I think, there is a demand, and cloud computing is one of the key enablers to allow us to be flexible enough and efficient and effective. So I definitely agree it's a key enabler. It allows us that flexibility and the efficiency. But I think for me, the key was that it enabled me to bring together multiple platforms across several overseas markets into that single pane of glass, and allowing us to provide that multi-tiered support. So, and I think coupled with it's not just the cloud, it's the high security standards, which enable us to work safely as well as effectively.
Got it. Well, let's now move to our viewers' questions. And I have one here, Lucy, which is a perfect follow-on to what you just said, which is, what methods do you use to ensure all new ways of working, like what you were just describing in the cloud, also support security compliance?
Yes, I think security is really high on our agenda, and many people working remotely who'd never worked remotely before. So some things were really alien to them. All of our devices are encrypted. We're using 2FA. We've got cyber awareness training, and those things were alien to a lot of our users. So, security is key to us.
Yeah, and I think that's the key that you've hit on as well, isn't it, Lucy? Which is, it's the training of people. It's making sure that the technology is very secure in a lot of instances, but it's making sure that people are trained to use that technology securely as well. We've seen instances of like simple things like putting passwords when you're, organizing a meeting and things like that.
And I think in this, during the pandemic, our problem was actually getting remote devices to people. The supply chain was extremely sparse for us to get laptops out to people who never used laptops. And once, we then moved to a bring your own device type model where they could remote in, or we could do mobile device management, so we could enable them to use their personal devices to get onto our network in a secure way.
Yeah, no, and we're seeing exactly the same, and I describe it sometimes like a perimeter. Your perimeter of how you're securing your data in the old world was potentially limited. Now it's limitless, as we've obviously proliferated in the cloud, but also everybody working remotely. And to your point, Chris, some learning enablement training on what does that mean? How do you protect the data? What are the basic processes that you need to do to make sure you're careful, as well as just the technology?
And I think I've not seen a lot of companies do it well yet, but I think that's where we're going to start seeing the tools where you're tagging data, the retention of the data, what's in a document, so you can index it better, but also so that it's only shared with people that should see it, no matter what system you're on, whether it's in your company or in the cloud, accessible to a lot.
Yeah, and I guess GDPR was a key enabler for those tools to come into play.
Yeah.
Yes, don't we all love it?
Move on.
Move on. Yeah. Well, Chris, you've got all this fun and games to pick up in your new role. So let's move to the next question from the audience, which is, how do you ensure the customer is well served in a new remote type of organization? Anyone want to take that first?
I'll go first. I think it's just putting yourself in your customer's shoes. yes, we can do metrics like CSAT surveys and all those sort of things, but put yourself in your customer's shoes. Is that the level of service you'd expect for the money that you're paying for that service? And I think a lot of people forget that when they go into their office, they forget how they operate in the outside world at home, interacting with your friends, your family. So again, I just put yourself in your customer's shoes.
Got it. Thank you, Chris. Lucy?
I concur. I think it is around, you look at what they do in other industries and see if there's something that you can take away from that and use in your industry. And it might be something as simple as, I go to pay for my fuel, I use an online app to do it. And in recent months, that's been absolutely brilliant. But it's small things that can make a really big difference to your customer and your business.
Yeah.
So it's looking for those opportunities.
Yeah, no, it's actually, I totally agree with that story. And I've talked about something similar. And I only started to pay for fuel with an app because of the pandemic.
Right.
And now I'm completely tied to one brand for fuel, which I never cared about before. So these things give you competitive advantage as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, so let's now move to today's takeaways. Where would you advise peers who are watching today to start from when looking to create new operating models to do business? And let's start, Chris, given that you are you've just started rather a new role. How would you advise peers to start with this?
So I'd start with put the tech to one side, funnily enough. So I'd start with getting a group of people, everything from the digital adopters from different departments to the digital dinosaurs, and ask them to picture and visualize what they would like to be like in the future if they were collaborating in a more diverse kind of geography, be that home, be that in a different country, whatever. Then when they've seen what that looks like, look at the gaps and then look in the cloud to see what tools are out there, because there's 1,001 different tools in all different areas. But unless you know what you want, I think you're on a hiding to nothing. Once you know that, then small teams, test it quick, fail early, and move on. Or if it works, scale.
Got it. Lucy, what about on the people and process side? What would your view be on that?
I would say talk to your team and talk to your vendors. You are not the only person that has to fix everything. And I had an example where I had a single conversation with one of my team about the hours I spent trying to work on a recharge model for our shared hosting service. And they said to me, just use Zybeam, you can do this, and it's still in its infancy, but there are possibilities out there, and there are a lot of tools out there that will enable you to do things that you may be doing manually today. So talk to people, tell them what your problems are, and share it.
Got it. Very, very clear, helpful. Thank you. Well, I'm going to give you my takeaway, which I think I've stolen here from Chris, which is about promoting business agility with small and frequent changes. So that was a great advice. And I think, one thing we talked about beforehand, Chris, was how you do small incremental changes, show value and build, but also do that as part of a bigger picture, a longer term view. Can you give us your perspective on that? How do you do small, but as part of a bigger longer term strategy?
Well, as Lucy knows, with agile, the people that say agile, let's just run and do stuff, but not have a guiding star, that end goal in sight, are normally the ones and the teams that fail or have costs running off. It's just understanding what the good would look like, what your strategy goal is. You may never get there, but as long as you're on the path towards it, you can then chip away and evolve in very small increments to start realizing the benefits soon.
Great, Chris. Thank you. Lucy, one thing we haven't talked about, but I'll ask you this as the final, which is stakeholder management. So thinking small and large. What's your perspective on how you get key stakeholders on board when you're trying to do change management?
I think it's not being overwhelmed by the big end goal. It's getting some quick wins in there for the stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
to enable them to see the vision that you can get to that end goal.
Got it.
Get them on board.
Prove it with outcomes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I think that's a great point to close. So Chris Tunnicliffe, Lucy Jones, thank you very much indeed today for your advice on the Cloud Council. Today's discussion and advice will be shortly available as an article and on demand at nutanix.com/CXO, where you can also find previous episodes of the Cloud Council. You can join us again next Thursday at the same place and the same time, when we'll be hosting a special episode with Dr. Art Langer, professor at the University of Columbia and director of its Center of Technology Management. And he'll be discussing how to survive and thrive during a recession. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and we'll see you again next time.